Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where I chat with inspiring artists 5 days a week. My name is Eva and my guest today is Nick Runge, and you will learn about his journey and why it's important to draw and paint every day.
Paint or draw every single day. So I think things will come along naturally from that. If you're just doing it so much, things will get easier. The time you're spending will start to seem more like just a normal task in the day. And then I think that's what can kind of lead to more of a career. Always having it in your life every single day. So
Nick is a watercolor, oil, and comic book artist, originally from Colorado, now living and working in Los Angeles, California. He is most known as a portrait painter, describing his art as something close to abstract realism. In the past, he worked as an illustrator and cover artist for various comic companies such as IDW Publishing, Dark Horse Comics, and many others. So please welcome Nick Runge, and let's get to the interview. So welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy to have Nick here. Hi!
nice to meet you.
Nice to have you here, and I'm super happy that you took time from your busy schedule to join us here and share some ideas and tips.
Oh, it's so awesome. I really appreciate being here. It's great.
Perfect. My pleasure. And let's start directly with your background, and maybe you can share some of your childhood stories. Maybe what was your first creative outlet, and if you always knew you wanted to be an artist.
Yeah, my parents are both artists. My brother's a painter. So probably since I was, I'd say 4 years old or so, I've been painting and drawing, and luckily having a dad who's an art teacher, college art teacher, pretty much just leads the way as far as encouragement and all that. So yeah, I've been drawing as long as I can remember. It's hard to, a lot of people have a first day they started or first experience, but I can't really remember. It's just always kind of been there.
So it was already
much,
painting at home and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I stopped drawing and painting a lot from the time I was probably 10 until I was about 15. So I just wasn't doing it. It takes a lot of work. So was not putting in the time, but luckily started to pick it back up in high school.
So was there some kind of a discussion as well with your parents, maybe when you told them, okay, I will take this professionally, or they were just expecting you to go to artistic path?
Oh no, I think they would have been happy with anything I was doing, but since I was drawing all the time, it kind of seemed like they'd think are you going to pursue this at all? And I started actually going to college for it, and then met a comic book writer. So it was kind of the first venture in anything professional was kind of through comics. So that was 2004. And so it was a little hard to convince them because I didn't finish college, to be let's go right into this. But they were cool with that, and it's been pretty good since. So it's a long road, but I'm still here. So
That's perfect. And which were kind of a biggest decision points or turning points in your artistic career, if you can take us through that story?
Yeah, that was probably, there are two of them. One is 2004. When I was 19, I decided I'll try to just learn more about drawing and perspective and anatomy and all those things, and try to start going to Comic-Con and all that. So that's when I thought, maybe I can, pretend to do this for a while. And I think that was the first time that I really thought, maybe because I do drums too and music, and that's really what I wanted to do at that point. It's I was taking drum lessons, and then I thought, well, this is it's always interesting to be kind of invited by someone have you ever thought about this? And so that changed a lot of things. And I just started to go to Comic-Con every year. And at the same time, my family is very much into fine art. So it was kind of trying to pay attention to both of those worlds. And so the first year to 2004, 2005 was pretty rocky, trying to figure out all of these things again, getting better at drawing and flying to California and getting to Comic-Con and seeing that big world and everything. So that was the first turning point, and that was about 11 years of doing illustration and comic book stuff. And then the point that I'm at now is that really because a couple of years ago, it's 2013. God, it's crazy how fast it goes. I moved from Colorado out to California, and that was kind of where it started to break away from like the commercial illustration and to more of like the fine art. Started looking at more painters and things like that. So those are like the two big turning points, I think.
And how was the transition for you when you were moving and adjusting to a new city and finding maybe also the galleries to show your art and starting like to find new paid jobs, basically?
Yeah, I'm pretty shy, so that was a tough thing, trying to move away from all of your friends. And I was actually, the opportunity I got that got me out to California was working for a game company called Court Games. So that was also strange, like trying to learn more digital art and trying to expand that to do kind of have two worlds at the same time of traditional painting and then going to that job. So that was basically the income. So as I went to that during the day, and then I was trying to still do comic books full time at night. So that was like sleeping 3 or 4 hours, and it was great and terrible at the same time. So I worked there for almost not quite 2 years. So during that time, luckily I had that income to kind of take that burden off. But the real challenge was just like the time. And I feel like nowadays it's the other way around, where I have a lot of time to paint, but I'm like, how do I make money again? So that's definitely pretty different.
And so how do you make money now, or what is your main income? Is it selling your art prints or workshops, or if you can share, like, how do you combine your income streams?
Yeah, I mean, now it's definitely more of a hustle, because it was kind of starting over, going from illustration to having a day job with art, which is a salary and something that was really cool, back to now it's basically just hustle and paint every day, try to get social media. So I'll have little sales, did one the other day. And it's basically just kind of scraping by and getting into galleries and things like that. So yeah, the main income source is kind of doesn't exist, but it's always every day I ask myself, like, should I go look for a job, or is today the day that maybe you'll paint the thing that someone notices you for? And so it's pretty kind of up in the air at this point. But I think with Instagram especially, it's kind of opened this door to being able to make a couple $100 here and there and make the rent and be able to just support myself and live with my girlfriend and our dog and make it work. So
definitely, yeah, because then you can just save up money for like a month or day, and then when you do more sales, then it's like more covered. So there is like up and down time. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, yeah. It helped a lot to work at that job and just save, and luckily I just basically care about painting and not a lot of. I don't care about cars or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, they would be super nice to have a cool one, but not now. Just down the road.
And
sure.
What about the galleries? When you mentioned, like, how does it work? When someone wants to go to gallery, do you go around to different galleries to talk to them, or do you contact them, or maybe they contact you, or basically, I guess, how does
it's
it
a
work?
lot of all. Exactly. A lot of all of those things. Mostly internet. I moved from Colorado out to LA, and then when I did that, I got noticed by a Colorado gallery. So it's funny that, they didn't know. They're like, oh, you're from here. So that's the gallery I'm kind of represented by right now in Denver, a Ben gallery. So I'm working on just finished 6 paintings for a show next month. So kind of hoping they'll dry fast enough today to get them photographed and then mailed and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, perfect. So what is your medium, if you can share with our audience? Like, is it mainly watercolor, or do you use other mediums? And do you have maybe favorite brand even?
It's interesting because I feel like I paint the most with oil, but I think that might seem crazy because of all the posts on Instagram are all basically watercolor.
That's what I was figuring it out from.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't pick which one I love more. I'm probably more comfortable with watercolor, just because I've always had done a little bit of that on the side, like with the illustration. So the thing that's challenging for me is oil painting, but it's kind of the thing I do the most. But at the beginning of the day, I try to do a watercolor portrait, and then those get posted so much faster that it's kind of, I think most people know that artwork. But I'd say oil paint is my main focus now, just trying to find some kind of voice with that. it's challenging. So.
Yeah, because they dry also quite slow, as you mentioned, right? Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I use a lot of like alkyds, which is it's kind of an Illustrator thing, just makes the paint dry faster, but it's also gives off a pretty potent smell, and so I'm trying to deal with that all the time.
Do
So
you have to wear also some kind of mask or when you paint or?
I mean, for bigger paintings, it's a good idea to have some kind of mask. But luckily, the studio I have, it's kind of a cubicle thing in a bigger room, so there's an open air top and fans and all that kind of stuff.
Ah,
So
that's cool. Yeah, yeah.
well ventilated.
Good, good. So you are not like
Yes.
sleepy or all like out at the end of the day.
Like, oh, my lungs are gone now.
Oh, perfect. And so what about then maybe the brand of the oils, like, or do you have like a favorite color you like? So maybe you pick and choose different colors from different brands?
Yeah, I think like Gamblin and Winsor and Newton, there are a ton of good oil painting brands. Some can get pretty expensive, but I think some of my favorite colors are just like the cadmiums and the things that are really expensive, so that's tough to go through those so fast. You only need a little bit of them, but I tend to use a lot of cadmium, red, light, and things like that just to kind of mix into all the colors. So probably, I don't know if that's my favorite color, but like Prussian blue, colors that are kind of more transparent, they're fun to work with.
And if you think about your inspiration and what is always in your, creations or some kind of like a vision or art style or even branding, which always comes through your work?
Yeah, it's tough to say. You mean as far as like artists I'm inspired by, or just
Something which you're always maybe thinking about, when you're creating, is it, like, nature or curvy shapes or something?
Yeah, I think I'm always trying to get as much detail as I can with the most abstract shapes I can. So I'm trying to really bring those two worlds together. A lot of the times I just want to paint abstract, but then at this point, with like my understanding of it, I don't know when I would stop or kind of where to start with it. So I think I try to have like a realistic base, mainly faces, and then even though it still takes a lot of the structure and light and all that for realism, I try to not think about that too much when I'm painting, and more just think about color and just kind of abstract shapes. So that's always the thing, is I want to just bring the two together whenever I'm painting whatever medium. I just want to kind of have it be never really like photorealistic or too tight. I used to do a lot of that stuff and I really liked it, but just trying to kind of move away from that now.
Yeah. And do you maybe have some tips for people who are starting out either with abstract paintings or oil paintings, watercolor paintings? If you have like few tips, like maybe this is good to do and this is like what you should watch out from.
Yeah, that I'd say, even though it's funny, because even though I work a lot from photography, I'd say probably the best thing to do is just paint something from life every day, whether it's like a little still life or a person, or because it's really hard at first, but you get so much more information and it kind of forces you to get it done quickly. So I think it sounds cliche, but just the repetition every day. I think when I was starting out and when a lot of people are starting out, you kind of have 4 or 5 drawings that are like your favorite and you're always showing them off, but I think that it's better to just put those aside and just paint or draw every single day. So I think things will come along naturally from that. If you're just doing it so much, things will get easier, and then the time you're spending will start to seem more like just a normal task in the day. And then I think that's what can kind of lead to more of a career. It's just always having it in your life every single day. So.
And is there a special way you would approach observation, from real life? Like, because everyone is talking about the practice, but how is it to practice maybe the best way that you actually learn and improve? If you have maybe some tips about that.
Yeah, I think life drawing, figure drawing, anything that's kind of not necessarily that you have to be going to a certain school for that, but just finding classes you can drop in. Because I think also the atmosphere of other artists, you're going to see all these different ways people approach things. And it's also that I'm so shy that I get like that adrenaline rush of being around people that I think really helps. It can be kind of crippling at first, but like anything, if you just keep doing it, I think that's the best way, is just working from a real person. Or if people are more into landscapes or still lifes or anything, I think it's just the repetition of go sit in the yard and draw something, draw anything.
Yeah.
So just start doing it.
And so, how was it for you then on the conventions when you mentioned that if you are shy and approaching different people, do you always have a table or, what is,
I was terrible at it. I was terrible. So I was trying to make friends with people who are talented and who are kind of, they have the gift of gab, and then kind of follow them and see how it goes. So luckily I've always ran into people who are a little bit older or whatever, and be like, come do this and do that. And it took, I think I went for 4 or 5 years before I actually got a booth at Comic-Con, because I first started going, I think in 2006, and it was really hard even then to get a booth at the waiting list and all that. Yeah. But I think it was just years and years of applying for that, and then finally got one. And that made it a lot easier, because then people come to you and you have a booth and they walk by and you kind of can be the salesman thing, and meet all kinds of nice people that way.
Oh, perfect.
That was, I think it was just the complete intimidation factor at first when I started going, that it either breaks you completely and you just find something else to do, or you get determined to keep going back. And I think Comic-Con is just kind of it just hits you like a sledgehammer of pop culture when you walk in. So it's hard to start at first. But I think as you walk around, things just kind of pop out. And it just kind of happens.
Yeah, definitely, because like a lot of artists are introverts, and it's hard to just like talk to other people, but then it's also important to do networking, right? So it's kind of like what to do.
Yeah, it's like hundreds of thousands of introverts and then exhibitionists kind of together.
That's actually a really funny concept.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
So this was the San Diego Comic-Con, right? You're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And do you go also for other conventions? You can mention like maybe for people to check out.
Yeah, I mean, right now I actually don't. It's kind of I'm just not really doing conventions or anything anymore for the time being. But there's like New York Comic-Con, and there's so many hundreds of them that I think if someone just throws a rock, like they will hit a Comic-Con somewhere. So just go to it, and tickets are usually not very expensive. Like the San Diego one has become such a movie, TV beast that it's kind of impossible to even get in. So if I tried to go back and get a booth, that would be a challenge. But I've kind of switched kind of more back to the fine art world and kind of what I grew up with more. So now it's kind of a lot. It's a quiet life now compared to going to the Comic-Con and or being on the computer every day doing illustration jobs and things. So it's kind of different now. And
if someone would want to do now what you do now, how would you advise them to start looking for a new paid jobs, or to get noticed when you're just starting out, maybe with fine art?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I think it's like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all those things help so much that I think it's really good to have a day job and then just draw and post. And I think luckily the internet, as brutal as it can be, people will notice it, or at least you can get good tips on like what to practice. And the cool thing about Instagram and those things is you can kind of send the artist a message and sometimes get direct communication, which used to be like unheard of. If you saw something in like an art magazine or something, the chance to actually talk to that person was that's ridiculous. So nowadays you can just get on the internet and on YouTube and so I think that there's so many avenues as far as job seeking that's kind of self-explanatory, but I think the main thing is just really try to hone the craft and just really focus on that, because that will really push through a lot of the nonsense if someone's actually going to start looking for illustration jobs. But yeah, even in the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of started to fall away from the networking thing as far as that goes. So that might be tough for me even to try to get back into doing that nowadays. So I'd say really just hone the craft and just keep posting online and see what happens.
So what are your go-to platforms now when you use them less? Is it Instagram and then the YouTube, as you mentioned, or other platforms as well?
I wanna do more things on YouTube. So I get questions about workshops and things
Mm-hmm.
online. So I think that would be a lot easier than just trying to have them in person. But I'd say Instagram is probably the best way for me to at least communicate, because it's obviously visually driven, and it's basically like Facebook's image platform, and then they just made that one thing. So I think it's
Yeah.
really cool. I
Yeah.
usually just use Instagram. So.
Ah, cool. Or you can sell the courses, like you can do like some
Hmm.
packages for watercolor or all paints or something like that,
Hmm.
and then that can be like partly on YouTube, and then the rest with more details you can sell. So that can
Hmm.
be like part of the income as well.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I'm so terrible at getting income streams going that I just need to. So it's because I give advice like just hone the craft, but at the same time, bills keep coming in and all that. So
You need to live
yeah,
from
I think
something, obviously.
yeah, exactly.
And is there something you wish you knew before you started the whole, artistic career, like advice to young self?
Oh, I would have so many things to tell my young self. I'd probably say not to worry so much what other people thought about a certain style, or trying to look at someone successful and do that, because I think that's a good way to learn techniques here and there. But I had a problem with just taking input from someone and completely letting it change how I approached a painting or drawing. And it's kind of, it can be good, but it can send you in tangents that you spend years on. So I think I would tell myself, just you have a good foundation. Having my dad, my brother, and my mom all as artists, there's definitely a lot of knowledge to pull from that I kind of regret not asking them more questions, where it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of all the illustration thing. So I was in that world of comics and how those artists think, which is really amazing, all those different talents. But I think just listening to myself more, I would probably be even further down the road at this point now, as far as finding your own voice and your own style. So it can be really easy to copy someone who is successful. Maybe you'll get a look that looks pretty close to that even, and people surprise themselves, and that can get jobs, which is good. But I think that it starts to make the artist, it makes you feel like people only want that. So I think my advice would just be more independent, definitely.
Yeah, just to do what you're passionate about, like to follow your goals. And
Yeah, just the gut feeling. So
do you maybe remember like a best advice you ever received from your family, or like also maybe like the worst advice which young artists are like getting now around you? Just these bad advices flying around.
yeah, probably follow your dreams or something like that. Because of course everyone wants to follow their dreams, but that's such a vague statement. It's like, all right, well, how do I do that? How do you start today to follow your dream? Yeah, so that's probably the worst advice. So those just general statements of just work hard and the money will come, and it does, but it's like when, like at what point, And I think it's a kind of a bad thing sometimes to get big opportunities when you are too inexperienced, because then you can blow it, and then those chances are gone for the future. So yeah, it's hard because when I first started, you think you're so great, and I'm thinking like, oh, I just know everything, and then it was almost like every day being reminded of how much you have to learn. So it's happens all the time, it's still happening. I'm sure it will happen for the next forever.
So how did you approach your learning, like how did you set goals, like, okay, I want to like learn maybe about light and color this year, or did you work differently about your career goals?
Yeah, at first it was basically just drawing and trying to learn just black and white. Very much again in that comic book world. So that's a huge crash course in itself, because you have to draw every single thing to tell a story. So there's not only the story aspect of which I never got great at, but then there's the technical aspect of anatomy and perspective and all that kind of stuff. So at first it was basically just pencil and ink, and it was very line oriented. So it was always just line work. But I always was looking at painters too. So I think naturally I tend to want to be more of a painter and not worry so much about the little details. But when I was first learning art, I mean, it's just so much fun to get the perfect line and have this kind of, it's a major challenge to be that detail, but it's also like a comfort zone because you're building up. It's not so much of a puzzle. Nowadays, I think it's more of a active development where I'll start something and not really know where it's going to go. And using brushes and paint, it's a lot easier to kind of, for me to be looser than when I first started. It was mostly just drawing based.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that's much of an answer, but
yeah, but it's good to think about how to, approach learning, because it can be overwhelming when you are starting out and you're like, okay, but I need to learn everything. So how do I start? Or,
definitely. And I think it's good to keep basic, like pencils and ink and monochromatic, and kind of, I think the biggest thing for drawing or painting is just learning value, because that is the key to everything. It's just values.
So how do you approach maybe observing value, like, is there something, like when you look at the object and you're like, okay, just half closing your eyes just to see the darkest parts and the light, or what is your advice there?
Even it's because color can be so overwhelming that it's nice sometimes to just, like, if you are looking at a photograph, maybe put it into Photoshop and just turn it black and white and kind of just, I think it's better to focus on the light at first and not really think too much about the color, because colors can be really different and contrasting, but can be the same exact value if you turn it black and white. So that can, be super distracting at first. So I think, definitely approaching anything, no matter how monochromatic or colorful it is, just focus on the light and not really worry about color, vibrance, or saturation or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have maybe some also like references, like books or like go-to materials to learn from? Something your favorite?
When I was doing the illustration stuff, it wasn't in print for a long time, but then I finally got a print version of the Drawing for All It's Worth by Andrew Loomis. Yeah. So it's very old advice, but it's just perfect the way he breaks down shapes and planes and all that kind of stuff. So I think for drawing, that was a book I looked at a lot. As far as painting, I haven't looked at a lot of instructional books. Maybe I should in a while, but mainly just looking at other artists and a lot of stuff online. Like, I'll find an artist, I think, wow, damn it, why does it take so long to discover this person, And, so it's inspiring every day.
And do you have maybe some favorite blogs or magazines or something? I was like looking for some new, resources recently, and I just couldn't find any like new art blogs. And so maybe they're not really available, but if you know something, I would like to know.
Oh, for sure. I'm so out of touch with a lot of that stuff. Like Savvy Painter is a good podcast. And then like Juxtapose magazine. Those are basically the ones I look at if it's going to be an actual magazine. But mainly just online with social media. I'll just kind of come across, or it's a lot of the times it's artists that I follow will share someone else's work, and then that's kind of like, oh my God, well, if they vouch for them and clearly the art is amazing, then that's kind of how I build just a network of kind of ideas that are going through my head trying to paint.
Yeah, some like reference library.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun. It's really exciting to buy art books. That's like the easiest part of being an artist, is buying the art books. So.
It's for my work, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's research, and you can write it off at the end of the year for taxes and all that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And what about your normal day? How do you design your day? Like how many hours maybe you paint, or how do you do the planning for a week or month?
Yeah, it used to be, luckily, like being in a steady relationship and everything has kind of helped me be more of like a normal day person. Wake up at 8:30 or 9 and go. I rent a studio that's pretty close, and it's like a kind of just a collective of other artists. So I try to get in there by like 10, and I always start the day usually with lately it's been oil painting for this show, but it's usually watercolor, and I try to do that for like 2 to 4 hours, and that's kind of, I try to do that every day, not only to practice, but it also gives me ideas for oil painting, and then someone might buy one of them. So it's kind of, sometimes feel kind of like a hack being like, it's for sale, but Yeah, like kind of quietly while I'm working, maybe someone will be asking about that, and then that pays a bill here and pays a bill there. So it's usually most of the day is oil painting, but it's 2 to 4 hours of watercolor, and then I try to work till about 7, and then go home and have dinner. And lately I've been having to go back, which really sucks, but I used to work all at night, and it was like the crazy vampire hours of wake up at 3 in the afternoon or something terrible and just work all night. And I got a lot of work done, and it was interesting, but it was definitely not healthy. So I think it's better it doesn't matter whether someone works at night or during the day. That's kind of up to them. But I think for me, I need kind of a structure and kind of repetition. So I think that's helped a lot.
And do you do something daily which kind of contributes to your success, like meditation or walks in the nature or a nap or something?
Lately, it's been thinking about exercising, which sounds ridiculous.
It helps thinking.
Yeah, no, that sounds so stupid, but I think like running or things that I absolutely hate, the times in my life when I had been doing those regularly, that has definitely kind of gotten a lot of frustration out. So I think that would be a better plan, is maybe run in the morning, and then just kind of the watercolor allows me to kind of just start something without having any kind of consequences, and that way I don't really have to think about that. So I think having the structure of wake up and take the dog out and have breakfast and just kind of these normal things gives me time to think about the painting and stuff. And that way when I'm working on it, it's kind of more muscle memory as far as putting the paint down. And that way you can be thinking about other things instead of just mixing the colors or anything like that. Try to just get that out of the way. So.
Do you put your color palette on the side? I want to use these colors before you start painting, so you try it out right before.
Yeah, if I know that the painting is going to have more colors, I'm still learning a ton about that too. Just how to oil specifically, like how to mix them. If I know it's going to have a ton of colors, I'll kind of put colors out that I'm not sure if I'll use them, just to have them there. And then other times, I think it's better to have just maybe like 2 colors or 3 colors and focus more on just the depth of the painting or the value and things. And then I think if it gets to like a certain point, I might think, okay, now I can plan out these other colors that I think will work well with the ones that are already there.
Yeah. And then also your dog maybe help you, inspiration or just being a companion.
Oh yeah, no, she's great.
So what do you have? What dog?
She's a pit bull lab mix.
Oh my God, that sounds great.
10 years old. She's the best, so we love her. Yeah, I'm at the apartment now. I can see her in the other room. So.
They're always so cute. And
yeah, I know.
Is there something which also kind of simplifies your life? You cannot live without, a favorite brush or, something else?
Oh yeah, that's I wish something would simplify my I think just setting a goal of right now just focusing on the art, because I think that when I did so much illustration, I would try to have a balance of work on this job and then have time for yourself. And it was always chaos because as soon as that job would get done, the process changes and all that stuff. And so that just bleeds into the personal time and that kind of takes over. So I think now, even though financially it's tougher, I think that having just a simplified goal kind of simplifies my life. Otherwise, because it was really tough for me to say no, just being poor and making money off art. If someone offers something, it's like how they overbook the flights, which is so terrible. Like when you're flying, like this plane absolutely has to be full, which for them is just greed and profit. But that's how I would think, is I have to absolutely have every single day kind of scheduled for bills and all that. And that just made everything super complicated. So I think just focus on just the painting, and that has enough challenges on its own. So.
And what about the future? That would be like some of my last questions. You know, if you imagine like your maybe future projects, or how would you, you know, dream out your scenario in like 5 to 10 years? You know, like either like financially stable, or what are the projects you know you want to you do, or.
Yeah, I think technically speaking, I want to start painting bigger and having like a bigger space to just to be able to do that. But as far as goals, I think it's kind of just the same thing I'm doing now. I just want to continue to be able to paint and not have maybe a part-time job or something is fine, but not get pulled away from it too much. So it's basically just keep surviving and hanging out long enough to maybe get noticed by someone. I think that's what we all try to do. And then if money was taken out of the equation, I think it would still be the same thing of just trying to improve the art, and just be happy with that every day, because it's such a dejecting, terrible feeling to go home when you know the painting's kind of in chaos, and it's like if I'm going to be able to rescue it or whatever. So yeah, my goal is just to continue to paint and not have to stop it for anything.
Perfect. That sounds really good. And maybe you can do more art books in the future or something, you know, so.
Yeah, those are definitely, I definitely do want to have some kind of book, and then some kind of maybe a workshop or something. Because I get nervous about being any kind of teacher, because I'm still learning so much, that a lot of people that come to the workshops have a lot of knowledge that I kind of feel embarrassed sometimes when I don't know certain technical answers to things. But at the same time, they're kind of like, when I go to workshops, just looking for inspiration that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the technical stuff. So I would like to have some kind of like digital workshop or something that someone can buy, that it's just a point of getting to where I can record something and think, oh, well, I'm not just going to learn a bunch of stuff that contradicts that, and being comfortable with something that somebody can keep and it can still kind of hold its own for a few years. So
yeah, definitely. Because we never stop learning anyway, so you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's always just a process forever. And so what about like far future, and like what would you like to be remembered for in like 100 or more years?
Maybe just one painting. If I can just do one painting, I think of it like kind of how with acting, if you can just be remembered for one movie or something, because so many people, it sounds so narcissistic to be like, I want to be remembered, but I think so many people just want to do something that becomes a classic or whatever. So I think maybe if just one painting gets to that point, I have no idea like what style it would be, or I tend to look back on old work and just hate it and not want to see it. So I'm always scared that like, oh, I'm in love with this painting now, but how long will it be until I hate this one, you know? So hopefully I'll have just one image that kind of holds up. But to think of what the world will be like in 100 years is scary right now. So.
It's true. We never know. And
Yeah,
maybe before we say goodbye, you can share last piece of advice or, you know, key takeaway, and then we will slowly finish.
Yeah, it's like I was trying to make notes, but then I was like, oh, I have mission here, ... and then I didn't fill it in because I'm like, what the hell is my mission? So, yeah, I think it's got to sound so repetitious, but just I think if someone is thinking about approaching art, because there's so many different levels. There's people who are super serious about it already and they already know, and maybe they're looking for advice that I don't really have. But I think if someone's on the fence about should I keep painting or should I quit and do something else, I think like always just keep doing it. And it's kind of like exercise. It's really going to suck some days and it's really not going to be fun. So those are the most important days to just do something, draw anything or paint anything. And I think if somebody's thinking about that, then they should just stop thinking about it and just go forward and do that. And eventually those questions will get answered, I think, just in the natural progression of time. So.
Definitely. I totally agree. And yeah, so we just need to practice and just it will get easier. Yeah, like at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So.
Perfect. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It was
I
so
really
much fun.
appreciate it.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
my
great to
pleasure.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for joining, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.